But, Mr. President, I come to the floor today to talk on a separate matter. We're just 4 months away from the inauguration of a next president. So President Obama is spending lots of time going around trying to polish his legacy. And he's doing it today at the United Nations. Well, the facts that we see and Americans see across the country is very different than what President Obama is trying to paint as his legacy. The president's legacy of failure, we see it in the president's health care law. Many people feel deceived by the president when they find themselves paying much more for health care. Many people have been hurt by the law. Republicans are trying to provide relief for the damage the president has done. The president's legacy of failure continues in foreign policy. America's power, prestige, and respect around the world has declined and in many places evaporated under President Obama. Today, I want to talk about the devastating legacy that the president has left in terms of failure regarding his economic policies. According to a recent Gallup poll, people say that the economy is the biggest problem facing this country today. The number 2 concern of the poll is a tie between unemployment and dissatisfaction with government. After 7.5 years of a very poor recovery from the recession, it's easy to see why Americans are so concerned about their own jobs, their own economy, their own future. It's also easy to see why the lack of faith with regard to the Obama administration in terms of their ability to even know how to grow a strong and healthy economy. You know, President Obama took office during a recession. The recession ended in June of 2009, just a few months after the president was in office. So that was more than 7 years ago. America has an economy that has been crawling on its hands and knees ever since. Normally, after a recession, an economy bounces back, does it vigorously, with great strength. Never happened this time. Under President Obama, the country's been struggling with the weakest recovery in the last 60 years. Millions and millions of Americans have been left behind, and they feel it. Going back to 1950, the average annual growth for our economy has been 3.25% a year. So over 3% growth a year on average since the year 1950. Through good times and bad, an average of 3% a year. President Obama's average of the past 7 years has been less than half of that. For the past 3 economic quarters, it's been growing 1.1% annual rate, 0.9%, 0.8%. It's clear that President Obama is well below average when it comes to his economic policies. That is not a legacy of which to be proud. This non-existent Obama recovery means that too many Americans have gone too long without being able to find a job. There's still close to 16 million Americans who are either unemployed or underemployed who are seeking to find full-time work. Many of these are part-time workers who are trying to go and find full-time work. Many others have given up looking for work entirely. They've tried, they can't find anything, and they've quit actually looking, so they're not even counted in the unemployment numbers. This is not a legacy for which anyone should be proud, and I ask the President, is he proud of this legacy? Last month, the Congressional Budget Office came out with some new numbers about Washington's debt. Now, the American people know that the President has added considerably to the debt of this country. He came into office, he immediately started running deficits of $1 trillion a year. The President's so-called stimulus package. No one had ever seen deficits like that before. And of course, each deficit gets added to the debt. The debt accumulates with deficit spending each year. But that wasn't enough for this president. Oh no, then he pushed through the health care law, burdened taxpayers with trillions of dollars of additional debt. According to this new report, Washington's deficit is going to be 35% higher this year than it was last year, and that just keeps adding to our national debt. Is President Obama proud of this legacy? Is he proud that he's impacting our children, our grandchildren, sticking them with a tax bill that they will never be able to repay? There's another report that came out of the Census Bureau last week. It said the average family income actually did go up from 2014 to 2015 by 5%. Now, that leaves us at an average family income that is still below the numbers from before the recession, from back in 2007. We're still below that level. And 5% may sound good for that year, but until you realize that health insurance premiums under the Obama health care law are going up 20 to 30% all across the country. And the Wall Street Journal, Mr. President, came out last week with a piece that said, America gets a raise finally. A raise for American families is good news. It should happen every year. But why didn't it happen sooner? Well, because of the policies of the Obama administration. Policies like higher taxes, more regulations. The average family income is less, still less, $900 less than it was in 2007. There's still 43 million Americans living in poverty. If President Obama is proud of his legacy, let him stand up and say it. But is he really proud of a legacy of making America wait so long for so little? Here's how the Wall Street Journal put it in its editorial. Last year's encouraging progress doesn't obscure the reality that neither the economy nor workers are reaching their full potential. It says the next president can build on this late uptake by changing his direction and policy. That's what we need to do, change direction and policy. That's the key. These failed economic policies over the last 7.5 years don't just belong to President Obama. They belong to Democrats in Congress who have been pushing and continue to push along this line of more government, more spending, more regulations, less individual choice. These are the same ideas that have robbed Americans of opportunities every single time the Democrats have tried them. So President Obama and the Democrats in Congress may think that the pace of this recovery has been good enough. Republicans in the Senate know that this is an economy which is nowhere near as good as it should be or could be. We are focused on policies that promote real job growth, so Americans can get off the sidelines and back onto a career path. Republicans are focused on policies that free our economy, free the economy to grow like it should, not just hobble along with a lackluster pace of the last 7 years. We're focused on policies that will rein in Washington out of control debt and regulations. That's the way that our children and grandchildren can afford to live the lives that they would like, not just paying for Democrats' mistakes. Mr. President, we're focused on policies that allow Americans to get paid what they deserve, not just one raise every 7 or 8 years. Republicans are ready to move beyond the president's legacy of failure and to help the American economy really get moving again. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.